Action cameras are all the rage right now. Their portability and accessibility, because of their lightweight, small size, and low price, gives the average consumer an unprecedented opportunity to capture any moment they want in relatively high quality. This isn't always a fun thing though, as the rise in availability of high quality and small-sized cameras gives consumers the opportunity to see things and record things they otherwise might never have seen, or otherwise might not have wanted to see. Here are 3 stories shared to me by some Reddit users about the horrifying or bizarre things they caught on camera with their action cameras that otherwise they might never have noticed. Number 3. It was the dead of winter. I loved this time of the year for a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons was because the cool air helped me sleep so well. This was the trend my entire life, until recently. Ever since I moved into my new apartment this winter, I'd been waking up in the middle of the night to what I thought were flashes of light, but when I woke up, it was always pitch black. These flashes of light were disrupting my nighttime routine, but I didn't think much of it. I figured there was an electrical issue or something causing my lights to flash. To diagnose this problem, I set up my GoPro camera in the corner of my room before I went to bed, with a 64GB SD card in it. It was about 12:30 a.m. when I went to bed, and the lights usually flickered around 1:30 or 2 a.m., so I figured the camera probably had enough battery life to capture whatever was going on. Sure enough, in the middle of the night, I once again woke up to what I perceived as a flash of light, but seeing as I was sleeping soundly beforehand, I brushed it off and went back to sleep, figuring I'd check the footage the next day. After getting off of work the next day, I came home and I immediately popped the micro SD card into my computer. I loaded up the file and fast-forwarded through it until I got to about the time I woke up. In the corner of my room, I could see the clock ticking along. It was a digital clock, and it displayed seconds too. It was 1:26 at this particular night when I began to watch this video. Everything was going just fine, until 1:29 a.m. Then, things got weird. First, one of my clothing drawers started to open, and then, again, slowly it shut itself back. A water bottle on my nightstand then scooted a few inches, all by itself. And then, I noticed that the clock in the corner of my room stopped ticking. It stopped ticking right at 1:30 a.m. The seconds weren't counting, and nothing around me was moving. Not even me. Then, the moment I'd been waiting for happened. The light at my nightstand was turned on. Just for about 4 seconds, it just stayed there, on. And then, it turned back off again. It felt like a lifetime, but after what must have been a minute or 2 of recording, the clock by my bed started ticking again, and I just popped up in my bed and looked around on the video. This scared me half to death. I knew if I showed this video to anyone, they'd accuse me of tampering with it, so I just kept it to myself. Needless to say, I moved out of that complex the following week. Keeping my deposit wasn't worth dealing with whatever I caught in that video anymore. Number 2. I used to be really into hunting and camping. I'd try and convince my wife to let me go out at least once a month and score some game. It always worried her because I never went with other people, but I thought of myself as a bit of a rugged individualist, and I didn't think anyone would mess with me. After a while, she got used to me going alone and coming back safe, and stopped worrying so much. Anyways, this story takes place early in the spring. It was just getting to the point where it was warm enough at night that you didn't have to bundle up so much, so I figured it would be a great weekend to start my season. This was the first time I had been able to hunt or camp all year, and I was thrilled to do it. I had all of my gear packed into my car and I left straight after work. After work, I headed to the state park I usually did all of my hunting at, and I went off into the woods. I wasn't hunting that night, as it was already dark when I got there. I did, however, set up a campfire once I got a few miles into the woods, and just sat around enjoying the nature and staring at the fire for a few hours. Eventually, I got tired and decided it was time for bed, but before I went to bed, I thought I'd set up my GoPro in a tree. I'd gotten it from my wife for Christmas, and I'd been raring to set it up around the campsite and see if any deer walked by, or if any wildlife I didn't expect were in the area. More than anything though, I just wanted to use it for the sake of using it. So I propped it in a tree facing my campsite, turned it on, and went to bed. The next day was uneventful. I killed one deer, took down my campsite that evening, cooked a few times around the campfire, and packed all of my stuff up. I realized though, right before I left, that my GoPro was still in the tree. At this point, it was obviously dead, so I figured I'd get to the footage later. I packed up my car, my GoPro, and all of my gear into the back of my truck, and I went home. This was a few months ago. Just today I remembered about that footage. I've been camping and hunting a few times since then, and obviously nothing strange has happened, so I didn't remember the GoPro, and I didn't think that anything would be of interest on it, but I figured since I had some time to myself today, I'd take a look and see if anything of interest happened. The video was normal until about 45 minutes in. In the background at that point, I could see a black animal walking towards the fire. At first I figured it was a weird deer or a bear or something. It was long, it walked on 4 legs, and it was kind of hunched over or disfigured or something. But as it got closer, I could tell that as it wobbled clumsily towards the fire, it wasn't walking on front legs. Those were hands. As it came into clear view, it was a person. This person was wobbling along on the floor of the forest on all 4s until he or she was right in front of my tent. And then it stood up and just stared motionlessly at my tent for about 5 minutes. Then, after what felt like an eternity of staring, it plopped back down to the ground on all 4s and wandered off. I don't know if that was some weird prank, if someone saw my GoPro and decided to do something weird in front of it, or if some deranged man walked through the forest and stumbled upon my campsite. But what I do know is the next time I go camping, I won't be going alone. Number 1. When I was younger, one of my favorite shows was always Ghost Hunters. The way they'd try to capture real footage of ghosts always intrigued me into watching it, even though they never really found anything. Anyways, now I'm 15, but when things started falling off of our counters and going missing in our house a few weeks ago, I thought it was the perfect opportunity to mimic them and get to the bottom of what was going on. In anticipation of ghosts, I set up my off-brand action camera in the kitchen, facing my mom's desk and the fridge, the areas we'd been having the most problems with. Things had been either moving or disappearing. I was excited to see this stuff, but also nervous about what I'd find. I'd lived in this house for 10 years now, and I couldn't imagine what I'd do if it was actually haunted. It freaked me out just to humor the idea that I had ghosts in my own home. Anyways, I needed to know for sure. I had my little camera plugged up to the wall so that it would charge while it recorded, and there was a pretty big memory card in it. It was set up so it shouldn't have any trouble recording all night long. Sure enough, the next morning after I had it set up, some of the items in the fridge had been moved around, and my mom's desk was missing the sticky notes she usually kept on it. Triumphantly, I told the family I'd set up my action camera just right so that it would have captured whatever happened. I had whatever was going on finally on video. I plugged my camera into the computer as my parents and sibling huddled around me, and we watched the video. Even now, what we saw still freaks me out. About 3 hours into the video, at what was probably about midnight, we saw some movement under my mom's desk. It was the wall. A piece of the wall started shuffling lightly, and then moved completely out of the groove that it was so seamlessly tucked into. At this, my mom started looking slowly over to our kitchen. A few minutes passed on the video, and someone came out. It was a person, a scraggly black-haired woman. She was pretty young looking, but obviously wasn't clean, and she had a deranged smile on her face. She immediately, carelessly threw open the fridge when she got out. She grabbed our milk and chugged it straight from the bottle, and then grabbed a handful of sandwich meat, throwing it into her mouth like she hadn't eaten in days. She grabbed my mom's post-it notes and retreated back into her hole, seamlessly pulling it back into place on the wall. Staring at the kitchen, we all quietly and slowly walked outside. From there, we called the police, waiting outside the entire time. When they got there, we showed them the parts of the video they needed to see. When they came back out, they had the woman in cuffs. She was pale, black-haired just like in the video, and had a smile on her face I can only describe as mad. They put her in the car, and that's the last I saw of her. Apparently, she'd been living in our house for over a month, as she'd been using my mom's sticky notes and making a mark on a sticky note for every day she'd been in there. There was a small indentation inside of the wall, just big enough and wide enough for someone to lay down. And outside of our house, there was a small opening that you could pull out that was just big enough for a person to get in. From there, we figured she cut the small hole in the wall under my mom's desk so that she could move about freely within the house while having the ability to leave when she wanted to without us knowing. I didn't sleep very well for a few days after this, but in hindsight, I'm kind of just glad nobody got hurt.